Today, we're going to be installing this AEM cold air intake on our NC Miata. My name's Andrew. Welcome to Mas Miata. We actually sell a few different cold air intakes for the NC, like this Cobalt air snorkel, which we actually have on the car right now, this nice setup from Ram Air, and even one from K&N. But there's a very specific reason we're using the AEM kit, and it has to do with this little guy right here. That's right, this kit is actually CARB certified, meaning the California Air Resources Board, in their infinite wisdom, has deemed that this kit is legal to use in California and other states that adhere to those emission standards. And we live in California, so we have to follow those rules, and luckily this kit is certified. Comes with everything you see here, all these nice couplers, beautiful piping, a really nice cone filter, and a sock that's water repellent, so if you get any rain on it, it should just roll right off. All the hardware, and of course, instructions. Before we tear into this, who is a cold air intake for? Well, it's going to be most beneficial for people who are doing track days and autocross and any kind of high performance driving. And if you're doing supporting mods that can take more advantage of the increased airflow, like a freer flowing exhaust or a custom tune on your ECU. For daily drivers, your main benefit is going to be sound. It's going to sound really cool. Realistically, Mazda did a pretty good job on the stock intake, so there's not going to be a massive increase in horsepower. But it's just kind of a cool accessory to have. Why you might not want this is if you live in a really wet climate where you're driving through deep puddles all the time, just because the air filter is going to be lower to the ground and more susceptible to sucking in water. But it does come with that protective cover, so normal driving in the rain should still be fine. I'm going to take the wheels off first, mainly for the camera, because we're going to have to be inside these wheel arches. You can do it with the tires still on and just turn them one direction and the other to get to these clips to take out the wheel arches. But I'm going to make our lives a little easier for filming and take these wheels off. Did you know the NC Miata is the only one that uses 5-lug wheels? This is because it was during the stint that Mazda and Ford were collaborated. But since then, they've gone back to their 4-lug ways. In order to do this installation, we are going to have to pull the whole front bumper off. So I'm going to put this car up in the air. Of course, you can do this on jack stands in your driveway, but we have a lift, so I'm going to use it. So the first thing I'm going to do to get this bumper off is start removing these little 8mm screws that attach these under trays to the bumper. You'll notice we actually have an aftermarket skid plate on this car. We used to sell these, but we're looking at bringing them back, so let us know if you're interested in an NC skid plate. Keep track of your nuts now. We need to take this piece of the arch lining out so we can get access to the bolts and wiring back here. So they use these little trim fasteners as well as a couple of 10mm bolts underneath. So these trim fasteners use a little crosshead screwdriver to pop the middle part out, and then you just pull that center part to unlock the fastener. Okay, it should be the last one, and this can come out. All right, we'll just do the same thing on the other side here. Cool. Let's see what's behind there. Next, we'll want to unhook the fog light as well as the side marker light. Just squeeze the little tab to unclip it. And same on the other side. And we have a few more of these little trim clips to remove so we can peel back this layer of the arch lining and get to some fasteners in here. We're missing a couple, but so you only need to take out enough clips in order to get to this bolt in the lower corner of the bumper. Looks like ours are missing, but you need to take these out on both sides.
And why are the ones missing on ours?
Somebody must have been kind of lazy last time. But we'll also need to take out these two nuts, and it's the same on both sides. Okay, the wiring is undone. We've undone all the bolts and nuts inside. The next thing is to take off these secret hidden panels in the front to take these bolts out. So these are also 10 millimeters. Never see that again? Oh, I'm seeing it. All right, that should be everything we needed to do under the car. So let's lower it back down, take the few bolts out of the top, and we should be ready to pull this bumper off. Okay, so I've gone ahead and put a blanket on the ground just for a soft place to land. I've made an attempt at taping off the body line to avoid chipping the paint. So the last thing to do is just to remove this series of 10 millimeter bolts along the top of the bumper. This should just pull straight off. It'd be nice if you have a buddy to help you, but as long as you're careful, work both sides. That's not so bad. Bumper extraction. All these dead bugs. Next, we have to take this crash bar off. There's 4 12 millimeter bolts on each side. Ah, that nice crunching sound. Before I forget, there's one more clip to undo. There you go. Sometimes these are a little sticky. Or that can happen. It turns out this car has an aftermarket oil cooler that ties into the crash bar, so that made it a little trickier for us, but you probably won't have to deal with this. Put my knee under it. Almost forgot to take this one off. This goes with the cobalt intake. Okay. With that, we have a totally exposed front end. We can see this cobalt intake, which just slips right off. The stock intake would just be a tube that comes straight across here. So similar design, this just scoops colder air from the grill opening. Now it's finally time to start removing the stock airbox components. We're gonna start with this breather hose, which just has a little blue clip that you squeeze to undo that hose. We're gonna be saving this tube for later, so don't throw it out yet. And next, we're going to unclip this wire. You have to go to the back side and squeeze it together with something like needle nose pliers. We're also gonna be saving this metal bracket. So first, we wanna slide this purge solenoid valve back off of the bracket. It's made a little bit trickier thanks to our beautiful cobalt shock tower brace. So that was pretty easy. We'll move that back, and we want to save this bracket. We're going to put this on the new elbow that comes with the kit, so I'll set this aside. I want to save this tube also, so there's a clip on the back. I want to squeeze together this clamp, and then we should be able to remove it. There we go. So we'll be saving this as well. Next, we're going to unplug the mass airflow sensor. Squeeze that clip, and then unclip the wiring from the airbox. Might have to go under with some pliers to squeeze those tabs together, or it might be able to wiggle it out. There we go. I wiggled it out. Get that out of the way. Next, we'll take this out because, of course, we're going to be saving it. Now we can go ahead and undo these hose clamps, which we will also be saving. Okay, old hose out. We'll save these clamps. Okay, next we're going to take out the factory airbox. First with the front half, we just unclip these 2 clips, and it basically comes right out. For this half, we just have to undo a couple of 10 millimeter nuts. Normally you would have to take out the intake tube on the front here. Since we had the cobalt one, I've already taken that out. So now I'm just going to take the airbox out. So it's attached at the bottom with this rubber grommet, so we can pull that out and then slide it out. And with that, we're ready to start installing the AEM intake. So now I'm going to start transferring everything over from the original tube over to the one supplied with the AEM kit, starting with the hose clamps. Just put them back as they were. Okay, next I'll do this metal bracket, which goes like so. You have to slide it into this and then over this nub. All right. Lastly, we'll put this plastic elbow into the new rubber elbow. Just press right in. You can see there's a D-shaped shape. And then we'll put this little guy back on. May need pliers for this. Okay, now this is ready to go on the car. Right back where the old one was. And I'm not going to tighten these clamps yet, just in case we need to wiggle things around a bit. And I'll leave some of these wiring connections for later. Next, let's get the first tube of the intake in. This is the first pipe that's going to be in the engine bay. We're going to reinstall our mass airflow sensor into it. Just lines nicely up and screws right in. And then next we'll need to put this coupler on. All right, I'll leave these clamps loose for now, but let's get this in place. Now we'll just bring it in, put that end in through the elbow. And like I said, leaving everything loose for now, just until we have everything fitting nicely and we can tighten it up. Next, we need to install these little rubber isolators into the car with the supplied hardware. All right, we'll need to slide the washer behind, get this through, and get the nut started. Okay, that should be good. Now we can put our pipe on. Okay, now we're going to test fit our lower pipe. It needs to slide into the rubber coupler in there and line up with these two isolators. Try and get it lined up there, which it does. And there it goes, it's started. So now we'll loosely put our hardware on here and get everything lining up. Flat washer and a locking nut. Go ahead and snug these. Okay, we're getting close. Now let's come in here, make sure everything's happy in this realm. Every piece has a bit of wiggle room, so make sure everything's seated nicely into these couplers. I'm pretty happy with where this is at, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten all these clamps. Clamp tightening action. Okay, all this stuff is hooked up again. It was a bit difficult with the strut tower brace in the way here, but managed to get everything back in place. The clamps are now tightened, including these ones. And I can go ahead and plug back in the mass airflow sensor. Most importantly, don't forget the carb label. Finally, the pièce de résistance, the air filter. Get the clamp tightened. That should do it. And lastly, let's put our little water resistant sock over it. So this little pre-filter should ensure that we don't get any water in the intake. Should be good for rainy days. And they say it lasts about 1 to 2 years. So if you do drive in the rain, you might have to replace this every couple years. But it just has an elastic band and slips right over. Okay, intake is installed. Let's fire this up really quick and see what it sounds like. Well, it sounds pretty good, but the real test is going to be when we get out on the road, so stay tuned to the end for a real sound sample. For now, let's get this back together. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I think this is a fun upgrade for the NC. It looks great, sounds really good, and it's legal in all 50 states. So I hope you enjoyed the install. I had fun, and we'll be back soon with more Miata content. See you next time.